Good evening, everyone. It is your girl Marcy Thomas, and I am so thrilled to be back with you with another episode of the BGC Book Club. So please come on in the room, and get ready for what's going to be a dynamic conversation with one of my favorite authors, as well as my homegirl from Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, as I just said, originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and living a whole bunch of other places in between, which one of these days I'm going to share that story. But number one, I've been waiting for this book for a while, and I am so happy that I'm one of the people who had a chance to read it early. So tonight's special guest is the one and only Tiffany L. Warren, and she's here to talk about her upcoming book. So we're getting a sneak peek today, and that is A Harlem Wedding. Now, she is a novelist and screenwriter who has published over 30 novels. In addition to writing books, Tiffany has written and produced multiple musicals for the stage, as well as several book-to-film collaborations with BET. And actually, there's something she just talked about on her social media a few days ago that we're going to talk about that before we finish this conversation. So yes, okay, I see you all in the room. And please shout out where you're joining us from. Yes, because we all love to know who all is here and see where you are as well. So without any further delay, I want to go ahead and bring Tiffany L. Warren to the stage. Welcome home, girl.
Hey.
I'm so happy to have you back with us.
Oh, and thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. So we have been waiting on A Harlem Wedding for a minute. I don't remember when I initially found out about it, but I know you gave me like a little postcard about it back in early October, and
Yes.
been waiting for this book ever since. Okay, we've got somebody joining us from Augusta. Hey, Augusta. Hey, Georgia. But
You got the postcard before I had the book cover. I was so anxious to start promoting the book. I made a postcard that just had faces on it because I was like, I got to start telling people about this book.
You
I
got
was
to
so
start.
excited.
Yes, and it is such a good book, y'all. If you love historical fiction like I do, you are really going to love and enjoy this book. Okay, got somebody from Jacksonville. Okay, we got the Southeast represented well here today. So, Tiffany, of course, this book comes out on May the 12th. So, again, we're getting an advanced sneak peek of it. So, first of all, I already told you behind the scenes, I love this book. It's such a good story. You know, we're talking about real people and real situations in this book. And so my first question, I guess, is to determine what was it that led you to want to tell this particular story?
So, when I got into historical fiction, I had a couple of story ideas, but I really wanted a story that was juicy. I'm gonna just say that up front. I wanted something that had some meat to it,
Yes.
that I could sink my teeth into as a storyteller, because we know historical fiction is not just a restating of the facts. If people wanted to do that, they could read an encyclopedia entry, or they could Google the people.
Right.
But I really wanted something that had some good emotional action in it, that I could really sink my teeth into, and find the good story and find the why of my characters. And I just fell in love with Yolande Du Bois. She, as a character, just, there was so much good, juicy stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
Her relationship with her father, all of these men, like she was a Lori Harvey of the Harlem Renaissance. So I fell in love with her, but it took me a while to put the story together. I got the book there in 2022. It's 2026. It's finally coming out. And it really took some time for me to piece it together. I had all the facts, and then I had to let it marinate and until the story emerged.
Yes. And what a story it is. I can't wait to get into it. And we've actually got some pictures we're going to share with you all as well, so you get to see who these characters are. So, one of the things, of course, it is about Yolande Du Bois, as you've already mentioned, and we get to learn about her dad. We get to learn about the men in her life. And I love how you said she was like Lori Harvey, because, yeah, she had her men that she was dating in her relationships and all those sorts of things. But then unlike Lori Harvey, we're seeing that she is dealing with the whole thing of really trying to, what should I say, carry on the legacy of her dad in a way
Yes.
that maybe Lori, that we're familiar with, didn't have to do because of the time and all of that. So give us a little insight into what's happening, or just like an overall synopsis of what the story is about.
So Yolande Du Bois, this book is really the series of unfortunate events that transpires that gets her to that Harlem wedding. People keep asking me about the title. Oh, why is the title a Harlem wedding? There's so much more than the wedding that happens in the book, but
Yes.
it's really all of the emotions that come with trying to please your father and trying to live out your dreams at the same time, and how
Mhm.
she ended up at a crossroads at her wedding that actually took place on Easter Monday. We're
Mhm.
talking on
On
the
Easter.
day of it was April 9th in 1928, but it was Easter Monday where she walked down the aisle to Count Cullen, a man who she was not in love with, but she did love as a friend.
Yes. Now that's something. And did you know that when we scheduled this, that
Oh,
it
that it
was
was
on
yes,
Easter
yes,
Monday?
yes. I
Oh,
did that
okay.
on
I'm
purpose.
like, did you realize that when you
Yes.
scheduled?
Hmm.
Yes. Okay, here's a good question. With so many genres, is historical fiction a big challenge in terms of research?
Yes, it absolutely is a big challenge with research. It adds a whole other component onto the writing, especially when it's a historical figure who we hold in high regard. So
Mhm.
W.E.B. Du Bois is one of our heroes. So
Mhm.
I had to take great care in telling this story and still making people know, hey, this is fiction. I don't know if these conversations really happened, but
Right.
these are the facts, and this is a fiction of it all. And we know that our heroes are flawed
Mm.
because they're humans, and
They're human.
humans are flawed. But the doing the research for historical fiction just adds an entire other layer on top of the storytelling. And I was telling you before we started how I researched this book with Victoria Christopher Murray
Yes.
in Harlem. We for 3 weeks we went to the library every day. She always says like it was our job. It was our job.
Yes. To pull
um,
together these
and
beautiful books.
yeah, so we came back to the hotel and we would go to our rooms and write, and we would text each other letters that we found. Um, it 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 added so much depth, I think, to how I wanted to present Yolande's story. Because originally, I thought I was telling one story. I thought I was going to just tell the story of her marrying Count, because there was
Right.
enough juiciness there with
Right.
that little situation to tell a whole novel. But when I discovered Jimmy, uh,
Mhm.
it I couldn't leave him out of the story. He
No.
was too big in her heart. And the way she described him to her father, and the way he said, I'm not paying Jimmy any mind, that let me know
Mhm.
I should pay him mind. And
Yes.
finding out all these facts and then trying to figure out what section of the person's life you want to tell, because nobody's life is exciting from cradle to grave. So
Right.
I had to decide where the story was going to start and where it would end. um, and that's a big part of historical fiction.
Yes.
Outside of making it interesting, we are telling a story. um, when people read fiction, they want to not just be educated, they want to be entertained. And that is the good thing about historical fiction. We get to do a little of both.
Yes, and it's really good. And I'm glad you mentioned Victoria. If you're in Atlanta, I'm actually interviewing Victoria Christopher Murray on Sunday. So I'm excited about doing that. And we did already have a conversation about Harlem Rhapsody, which I said feels like a companion book to this, because you explain, how they kind of work together, because you did that so well before we came on.
Yes, they're in the same universe, right? There's
Mhm.
not like a sequel or a prequel or anything like that. They're all the characters live at the same time in Harlem, and so the stories complement one another, because now we're seeing W.E.B. Du Bois in a new light. And Harlem Rhapsody, you're seeing him at work and at play,
Mhm.
and in my book, you're seeing him at home, and his
Mhm.
relationship with his legacy, his only child, his rainbow child. They had one child who passed away, a son, and then Yolande was born. And so his entire legacy rested on Yolanda's shoulders, which was a
Mhm.
heavy burden to bear.
Mhm. Yes, it definitely was. So I want to. I went and took the liberty of going to find some pictures so you all can see who these people actually are. So we're going to start with the beautiful Yolande. Now, when we first meet her, she is a teenager
Yes.
in this story.
Yes, she's a senior in high school. And her high school prom was a big to do because at the
Mhm.
last minute, the Brooklyn Girls High School wanted to segregate the prom. And so we know Papa Du Bois was not going to stand for that.
Right.
And so that was the biggest moment maybe of her young life where she was thrust
Mhm.
into activism before she was really ready for it. She just wanted to go to prom. A girl just wants to go to prom.
Right. Exactly.
But she ended up being an activist at her own prom and being interviewed by newspaper reporters at her prom.
Hmm. And that's quite a thing just to think for a young person, because we know it's one thing to do it because you want to do it,
Right.
and it's another thing to kind of be thrust into it, because that's one of the things that about WEB that like he was like you could tell here, oh, the sky is blue, and it's like if there's a reason to fight about the sky being blue, he's going to automatically turn it into something where it's like, hey, I'm just trying to tell you that the sky is blue. So that's a lot, to put on a young person.
I agree. And she navigated it in a way that a daddy's girl would, She internally had her thoughts about it, but then she typically did what her father would want. She did not want to embarrass her family. They were members of the Talented 10th.
Hmm.
And that is, she knew her job. She knew what her role was. And that was to give her father some talented grandchildren and find a husband who
Right.
was also a member of the Talented 10.
Right. Right. Because he was like really the one who first came up with the concept of the whole talented
Yes.
10th. So,
Absolutely. That is it.
there's that,
Mhm.
and what is this legacy that she's leaving behind? So for me, in reading her story, it was just so many things that in and of itself. Then now you have this daughter who's kind of called to be the legacy carrier for her father, and that is different when it's a girl. I mean, I'm just.
Right. It was different. And Yolanda was overwhelmingly average. She
Mhm.
had, average grades. If C's and D's get degrees was a person, it is Yolanda. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
And she didn't really start to blossom until later. But she, was such a pretty girl and she
Mhm.
did what pretty girls did. She put on her fashions and
Right.
she charmed the young men.
Mhm. Absolutely. But it's so interesting because, as you can see, people in the comments are talking about how she's cute, she's pretty,
Yes.
all those sorts of things. But she also, at the time that she was coming up, a lot of people didn't see her that way.
No, they didn't. They did not see her as pretty because she was overweight. She
Mhm.
carried a little extra cushion for the pushing.
Mhm.
But I think she was lovely. Her mother was a stunner. Nina Du Bois was so gorgeous, and
Mhm.
Yolande looked more like her father and her father's
Mhm.
side of the family.
Mhm.
But she had, like I said, she had all the latest fashions, all the trends, all the hairstyles.
Mhm.
And so, what she didn't come by in her genetics, she came by with, the whole fabulosity of it all.
Right, right. So one of the other things that, and if you don't normally watch here, we don't give spoilers, so we're not going to spoil the book for you,
No
especially since you
spoilers.
got a whole nother month before it comes out. We don't want to do that, and we never do anyway. But it was also interesting looking at Yolande that, this whole thing that kind of starts off the story is she's a teenager, she's in her senior year, she's going to this girls' high school, but she also is in a situation like with a lot of people who have, a little bit of wealth, a little bit of prestige. Her father's trying to, thinking about marrying her off or who she's going to be partnered with already. She hadn't even graduated from high school.
Well, yeah. I mean, and we have to, I listen to people talking about the choices that characters make. We have to remember this was the 1920s.
Right.
Okay. And so there was not much for a woman to do other than to get married. I mean, there were not many careers. Uh,
Right.
we do know. So some of this is not spoilers because she's a historical figure, right?
Right.
So Yolande had a career in education. She was an educator in Baltimore public schools, um, but there wasn't much for a woman to latch on to in the 1920s other than marriage and family.
Right.
So it wasn't too odd for her father to want to matchmake because the young men were coming up. You know, he
Mhm.
knew the young men who were in college, the young men who were gifted. He was especially enamored with writers and poets. Um, and Yolanda was an artist, and she also tried her hand at writing as well. She wrote several articles in the Brownies book, and in also the Crisis. She interned
Mhm.
at the Crisis after she graduated from college. So these are things that Yolanda would have wanted to grasp hold to as a young woman, but marriage was always there in the forefront because that was really her duty.
Hmm. And it's like, you heard even in later times, and I'm thinking like around the time my mom went to college, 40 years later, is talking about going to get an MRS degree. So, I mean, that was a thing for a
Yes.
long time where you would go to, to kind of seek a husband, to find a husband. But things are also very different because it's the 20s. So a lot of very strict, I mean, just a whole lot of stuff that's going on at that time
Mhm.
that's, very different from what it might be from someone who's having that experience in later years.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I love that even though Yolande knew what her, duty was, what her role was in society, she still was curious about what else is out there for her.
Right,
Um
right.
and I was happy to pull some of those threads. And I read her journal, her
Okay.
scrapbook, letters that she wrote to other people. So there was a yearning that she had, and I wanted to make sure that that yearning came through on the page.
I love that. Yes, because we definitely get to see that while that would have been, getting married and all that, she definitely wanted other things. She's like, how can I do both?
Mhm.
How can I have it all? So, yeah, that's pretty good. So, the first love interest that we really see, I'm going to pull his picture up too. Let me go find him. Now, of course, we meet him early in the story. Hold on, my pictures are doing weird things. We meet him early in the story. That's she's like, my man, my man, my man.
Listen, I remember in Dream Girls when Linnell said, Linnell loves Jimmy. I say, Yolanda loves Jimmy. Yes,
Yes.
I
Yes,
love
Jimmy.
Jimmy so much. Yeah. Jimmy Lunsford, also known
Yes.
as Piggy Lunsford.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, he's a good looking fella.
He was a
And
jazz musician and very gifted. He played like 9 instruments. He was a band leader. He was amazing. And he did a lot on the music scene in Nashville and Memphis. He was an educator after he graduated from Fisk University. And he was the love of Yolande's life.
yes, just to see him. But yeah, I can see why, nice little chocolate drop. Yes. And talented, something about a musician that's just sexy anyway. Know,
Yes.
just telling the
Yes.
truth. But yeah, so this is the guy that she really liked, and in this book, liked slash loved, and we get to see, what life looked like for them, and
Mhm.
just the fact of thinking about how, and we've already talked about it, how dad might have somebody in mind or the type of person in mind, but
Yes.
sometimes what your family thinks or what your family feels may or may not be in alignment with what you feel is best for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you don't necessarily just set out to fall in love with someone. And I don't think in real life Yolande set out to fall in love with Jimmy, someone who was the opposite of what her father would choose for her. W.E.B. Du Bois he didn't care for jazz music at all. He
Right.
thought it did not support the movement. It just, led people to partying and boogie woogieing, and
Mhm,
that
mhm.
wasn't his thing. He felt if art did not uplift the black race, then he didn't have time or energy for it. But Jimmy, we do, see that Jimmy gave a lot back to the community as well, even
Mhm,
as a jazz
mhm,
musician. So,
mhm.
definitely don't agree with W.E.B. Du Bois on that particular point. He left a legacy in jazz music that is still felt even today.
Yeah, because I mean, even though I wasn't familiar with his story, I had heard his name even before this. So,
Mhm.
yes, he went on to do some things, but it's just interesting how, and I mean, it can happen now where people might think that certain paths aren't lucrative, or you're going to be struggling. 'Cause I mean, anything artsy, people think you're going to struggle anyway.
Yes, for sure. And you got to understand a father who wants his daughter off of his payroll and onto
Right,
someone else's, her husband's.
right,
So,
right, right.
there were some very practical reasons why W.E.B. Du Bois was not really concerned about Jimmy Lunsford, but Yolande was very concerned
He was
about
very
him.
concerned. Yes, very, very concerned. I like this comment as well. Like, yes, what a challenge in the 20s when you had other desires other than marriage and having children.
Yes, it
Mhm.
it certainly was a challenge because you had to, fight against everything, and you had to fight society to even be able to accomplish anything other than that. So, yeah, it was very challenging. And I hope that I was able to kind of bring some of that angst forward in Yolande's in telling her story, because she certainly had it. She very much wanted things that were kind of outside of her purview, and
Mhm.
didn't really have a lot of support from home when it came to that.
Right, right. She definitely, wound up a lot of times following what she was told to do. But then I liked her because she has some spark and some fire in her anyway. Because even, when she, meets Jimmy, and when she does go to Fisk University, following in her father's footsteps, I mean, she didn't just always follow all the rules. So I did
Yeah.
like that about her.
Yeah, she was certainly a rule breaker and she was very feisty. And I got a lot of her shenanigans from just some of her journal entries. There is
Mhm.
a young lady in the book named Crystal Tully, and I won't
Oh
spoil it
gosh,
to say
yeah,
who she
Crystal.
is. But
Yeah.
there is a journal entry that Yolande made about Crystal's hair.
Hmm.
When Crystal arrived at Fisk, she said her hair was tragic. And I just hollered out loud when I read that because Yolande had such personality in her
Yes.
writing and how she wrote her letters. She was so coquettish and sweet. And even when she was asking her father for money, there were countless letters back and forth where she needs money for trinkets and gifts and clothing and everything. She was such a sweet little brat that you
Hmm.
kind of fell in love with it. Like she was kind of like a Hillary Banks, like, Daddy, I need $300. Like
Right.
that was her thing.
Right. Absolutely. And there's a lot about her father, obviously, because he is, the man, WEB. But we also get to see some of her, Yolande's relationship with her mother, Nina, as well.
Yes. And so the relationship with her and Nina is so different than with her, Yolanda and her father, because Nina is a nurturer. She stayed home. She was a homebody, and she felt it was her job to take care of home and to take care of Yolanda. So
Mhm.
Yolanda had countless medical issues.
Yes.
Some people say that some of them were a little bit psychosomatic, like she would, have fainting spells when she was stressed out, and we see some of that in the book. But
Mhm.
she actually had lots of physical ailments. She had a horrible case of appendicitis when she was at Fisk, and there were these things that I was able to pull it into the story, but Nina had her hands full with
Mhm.
Yolande because
Mhm.
Yolande, even just one daughter, she was a whole heap of, you know, stress when it came to making sure she was okay, making sure that she had everything she needed while she was away at school and everywhere. They would send her, abroad for vacations. And
Yeah.
W.E.B. Du Bois would create an entire itinerary for her
Mhm.
and then instructions for the travel. Like, do not spend all your money by the end of the trip because, you can't ride home for more. But of course, she would spend all her money and ride home for
Right.
more. Like that's
Right. Right.
so. But yeah, the relationship with her and her mother was so interesting to me because it was very much all of the cares and concerns that you would think a daughter would bring to their mom. She would
Mm-hmm.
write her father about it.
Yes.
And so they had this tumultuous relationship, father and daughter. Um, but really, you also saw the love there. So there was, the push and pull, and then there was the love. And with her mother, it was more of the care and feeding of Yolanda, of
Yes.
Yolanda. Mhm.
Yes, definitely, to do that, to take care of her daughter. And you've already mentioned she was a rainbow baby. So there's that
Yeah.
in and up. So number one, she's a girl. So there's a thing of the whole thing of being a little more protective and
Yes.
things like that. And what's available versus what isn't, and maybe directing her life. And then the fact that, she is sickly, she is, the quote unquote rainbow baby. So we can see all of the reasons why she would have
Mhm.
been spoiled, and why, maybe even a little more so than, under different circumstances.
Oh, absolutely. That being the rainbow baby really shaped Yolande's life, because she had to live out all the dreams her father had for his son who
Right.
didn't survive. And so
Right.
it was really impactful having to navigate the world as, the child all your parents' hopes and dreams are pinned on it. And her mom, Nina, after losing her first child, had, a lot of anxiety. She became a germaphobe.
Mhm.
And so there was Nina's health in addition to Yolande's health. She would,
Mhm.
have frequent ailments herself. So mother and daughter both kind of had this little circle thing where there was, they both needed the care and feeding of each other. And it was so um codependent, that relationship that they had, just from the letters that I read.
Mhm. Now you mentioned like the research and the letters and things like that. So was a lot of the research actually done, say, at the Schomburg, or
Yes.
a variety of places?
So it was a variety of places. I did a lot of research at the Schomburg. That's where I was with Victoria Christopher Murray. Went
Mhm.
there every day reading letters on microfiche. And if you've never tried to read cursive handwriting on
Mm.
microfiche from
Mm.
over 100-year-old letters that are faded, it's hard. You're making the screen big, you're trying to see what they're saying in the letters. But then there's also great treasure troves online of more of the correspondence between W.E.B. Du Bois and everyone. He kept his correspondence almost like a serial killer, like every piece of paper,
Okay.
he kept it. So the University of Massachusetts had an entire online database where they went and scanned just about every letter, picture,
Wow.
memo, bill that was saved in all these boxes. I found online, so there was an image from one of Yolande's scrapbooks that a person who had discovered them in a storage locker
Oh,
in New
wow.
Orleans found. And they were trying to sell them online. Now, I knew it was authentic because I knew Yolande's handwriting from reading all her letters. I knew what her handwriting looked like. I was like, oh my goodness, I want those scrapbooks. But they were, really trying to make them available to maybe a museum or
Makes
a
sense.
university institution, because they wanted, top dollar for them. So University of Massachusetts acquired those scrapbooks after I had already written the first draft of the book, and they had it
Mm.
online that they had acquired the scrapbooks, and I drove there and I sat all day in the library turning the 100-year-old pages of her scrapbook. Some of the pages were so delicate that they were starting to crumble, so I had to turn them so slowly and
Mm.
just to see her thoughts written. And there is one picture in her scrapbook, and I think I have it shared somewhere on my social media, where she has basically all the things that she loves. And her father's in a heart, a picture of her father, a picture of her mother. And around her father's image, she wrote, "Let me be worthy."
Mm.
And it let me know I didn't see this until after I'd already written the book. And it was really like validation for me that I was striking the right chord on who she was. She wanted so deeply to be worthy of not her father's love because she had that by birth. She wanted to be worthy of his respect and admiration as a woman of the talented 10th.
Wow. That's just deep to think about that. Let me be worthy. And how many people, struggle with that sense of worthiness.
Yeah. And that's why in the dedication to the book of a Harlem Wedding is to Yolande, who was always worthy. You
Mm-hmm.
were worthy. And that I think is something that resonates with Black women,
Absolutely.
always wondering about our worthiness and not just relationships, but in the world.
Mm.
And we are worthy. Just like
Yeah.
Yolande always was worthy. She would have been worthy with or without a husband, with or without a college degree.
Right.
And yet she had those things and still questioned her worthiness.
Hmm. And we know college degree, graduate, went to graduate school as well.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
it's wild because 100 years later, sisters are still doing that, right?
Yes.
College
Yes.
degree, multiple degrees, and still in some ways struggling with worthiness. So I love the fact that you just shared that because it helps us to see and remind us that we are, just like Yolande was worthy, we are worthy
Absolutely.
regardless.
Absolutely.
Regardless. Yes, I love this analogy of her. Absolutely, absolutely. I want to share this comment because I think it's a good one. I could have been a 20s girl living outside the box. I love the culture for those times, the style of dressing, especially the shoes.
Oh, yes, the shoes and the music. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. I love the music. If there is a time in the past that I would go back to, because that's a loaded question asking Black folks where they're going
Yeah.
to the past to. Like, there's
Right.
not a lot of, but I would go to the 1920s, but only in Harlem. Okay.
Only in Harlem.
Only in Harlem. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else other than Harlem as a Black person in the 1920s, because we know there were things happening all over the United States that were scary. The Tulsa massacre was in 1921.
Mhm.
We were thriving in 1920s Harlem, though. The arts were exploding,
Mhm.
and we were living life on our own terms, at least until the Great Depression, where everyone was impacted, including Black folks.
Right, right. And thank you for that comment because that leads me to the next question I was going to ask. Because, of course, we're learning about Yolande and her father and Jesse Redmond Fawcett, but she's in here as well.
Right.
The men that are in Yolande's life. All of these things are covered in the book. But one of the things I also really enjoyed was seeing the fact of like the organizations that she became a part of, like
Mhm.
becoming a Delta and things with the AKAs and all of the frats and all that sort of thing. So and some of the people that she just interacted with. So that I thought that's pretty powerful to see those things as well in this book.
Yes, and I didn't know that Yolande was a Delta when I decided to write the book. And when I came across, I think it was on a website, Watch the Yard.
Yes.
There was it, they weren't the article wasn't even about Yolande. It was about Marsha Williams, who crossed the same day as Yolande. Um,
Mhm.
and they were both, brought into Delta by Esland Good. And so Yolande, when I found out she was a Delta and the year that she crossed, I was like, oh wow, there was a Delta convention in Harlem that year. And I really
Mhm.
wanted to bring that to the forefront because as a young woman, I really feel like becoming a member of a sorority that was so grounded and rooted in education and activism that
Mhm.
it had to have impacted Yolande in a
Mhm.
positive way. And I couldn't leave that out of her story, especially since she became an educator later on in life. I had to make that a part of her story, and I'm glad that I did, because I also believe those institutions that were founded at the turn of the century were they still are impactful today. And so I wanted to also, just bring that to the forefront, that, Yolande was a member, and that it helped change her life, just like it's changing young women's lives even today.
Yes, I love that. I love seeing it. Well, I'm a Sigma Gamma Rho, which came about in 1922. And I think there's in the book, you have some things happening in November 1922. I'm like, oh, that's when my sorority was born, in November 1922. But yeah, it's just good to see that, because just thinking about at that time, there were so many things that people were trying to come together and build relationships and build
Yes.
organizations to do good. There's a lot of controversy about things nowadays, and we're not going to get into that. However, we know, those who know that
Yes.
these organizations were founded for good. They are still centered in good and community and social, social things, all of those things. And it's like an extension of some of the work that her dad would have been doing, like with the NAACP. So,
Oh, absolutely. And I do definitely think that her father would have pushed her in that direction to become a member of a sorority, because that's what the Talented 10th were doing. They were building institutions. And I'm not a member of the Divine Nine, but I am certainly inspired by the work that has taken place over decades and generations. And just to know that Yolande gave back in that way just added some, another layer to her character.
absolutely. So, of course, we get to see the Divine Nine, but then we got a Philly Delta watching. Yeah, I knew as soon as you said Delta, the Deltas was going to show up. Deltas are in the house, and got love for all the D9 here. But also, in addition to like seeing some of those organizations, we also see other like historical women figures that we are familiar with. So name a couple of the ladies that we also see in this book, which I was definitely excited to see them.
So Zora Neale Hurston makes an appearance. I love
Mm-hmm.
her. Nella Larson,
Mm-hmm.
Jessie Redmond Fawcett, who
Mm-hmm.
I have her in the book being Yolande's mentor, because she was over the Brownies book, where Yolande submitted art and poetry and short stories, and she would have had to interact with her that way. And then I said Yolande interned at the Crisis, where she also would have had a great deal of time spent with Jessie. And I just feel like, someone like Jessie Redmond Fawcett, who was so different than her mother, would
Yes.
have been like, oh, I admire her. Even the fact that, Yolande decided to go with Delta as her
Right.
sorority when most of her friends were AKAs. I was like, now see,
Mm-hmm.
that was Jessie. That was Jessie's influence there. I don't
Yes.
know for sure, but I really do believe that
Mm-hmm.
Jessie mentored her, and that she admired her so much that she became, a Delta woman. And so I love pulling these folks into the book, and because they were there. They were there. Elia Walker,
Yes.
daughter of Madam C.J. Walker, was
Yeah.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a great friend of Countess Cullen. So she
Yeah.
makes an appearance toward the time of the wedding. So there were so many historical, Josephine Baker,
Yeah.
Ada
Great
Bricktop
top. Yep.
Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even remember. There's so many people in this book that, I wanted it to be more than just name dropping. I wanted them to be a part of the Harlem scene, and even over in Paris, where we see
Yes.
Ada Bricktop Smith performing. It just adds to the whole look and feel and time of the 1920s. It was a magical time.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, realistically, because of the circles that Yolande would have been traveling in county, we about to start talking about county here because somebody already asked a question about him. We're going to get to it. But, those are the people that they would have been around. We
Yeah.
see Langston Hughes and,
Oh yeah.
yeah, we see a bunch of people that we're familiar with. And, for them to be in the story is not a stretch because these are the circles that they would have been traveling in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Langston was a groomsman in the wedding, in the infamous
Mhm.
wedding, the wedding of the Harlem Renaissance. And there were, like you said, Yolanda was a socialite.
Yes.
So she knew everyone. She got
Mhm.
invited to every party.
Mhm.
And you would see it. There was Geraldine Desmond, who makes an appearance late in the book. She was a famous journalist in the Harlem Renaissance, and she went on to be an editor at Ebony Magazine. But she, during the 1920s, wrote every gossip column in every black newspaper across the country. And there were little tidbits and little snacks of tea and cookies in each one of her articles where she told all the goods. Like every
Mhm.
party, they would list who all was in attendance, because that was the thing. If your
Mhm.
name was mentioned and you were at the parties, you were really, on the scene. And so Yolande's name, any day you would open the newspaper and see her. And they followed her movements like,
Yes.
the paparazzi do today with celebrities. If she, went to a party, it was listed. If she went to summer camp, it was listed. If
Right.
she went to a bridge game down the street, it was in the newspaper.
Yeah, it's
So,
crazy.
yeah, it was. It, I don't know what it was like to be, a celebrity during that time, but
Mhm.
Yolande was that. If there was a celebrity to be had, she was certainly a celebrity.
Yes, it's kind of like think of what it's going to be like for Blue Ivy when she's an adult.
Absolutely. Yep.
Everything she does, people are going to be
Mhm.
watching Blue Ivy because of who her parents are and all of that sort of thing. Okay, I attended a Du Bois reading group here on Tuesday. Okay, okay,
Oh,
and this in Philadelphia, if I remember correctly. You are in Philly, I believe. Okay, I love that. See, when people show up all the time, now I know where they live. I love that. But okay, so we know we've already seen Jimmy. I'm gonna put him up one more time for those who might have missed him when he was up before.
Yolanda
Yeah,
loves Jimmy.
yes, this is who
Hey.
John loves, right? And this is
Yeah.
the man that he was actually a little bit younger than her.
Yep, he was a little bit younger.
Mhm.
Hmm.
But they had this relationship, and like young people, there was a lot of tumultuous things going on in the course of that, and then of course we've already talked about, and these are no spoilers. We already know that dad wasn't really a fan, all those sorts of things, and being young as young people are, there were times where there was a lot of back and forth between them and jealousy, all kinds of stuff that's happening,
All the things, all the
all the
things.
things that you would expect, then really honestly anybody at any age, but in situations
Right.
like this where, they're young and other people are trying to kind of pull the strings of what's happening in the relationship. So at a certain point, Yolande meets County Cullen, right? And I'm gonna show
Hmm.
her again. So at a certain point, she meets County Cullen because again, this is the world that she's circling in. So tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about their friendship.
So she met Countay in 1923, and so as you know, their wedding was not until 1928.
Mhm.
And they built a friendship based on mutual friends, mutual interests in Harlem, and they were both on the scene. Now, Countay was on two scenes, though. He was on the scene where Yolande was a socialite and he was in Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. And so they would be together at parties, events, social action, activism. But then Countay was on the other scene too. He was on the artist scene where he was a poet and he was in this group of poets who would go to Elia Walker's, studio, and they would write and they party. And, it was very much fluid, and I don't, folks say Countay was gay. I honestly did not find evidence that he was gay. I have evidence that he was fluid, and that
Mm.
he, went different ways, So
Right.
we don't know for sure if he was gay, but we do know that he did not exclude men from his love stories, right?
Right.
So the thing about Countay was, those worlds were separate. His father was a pastor,
Yes.
and there's some rumors about his father's sexuality as well that I also could not confirm. And I'm being very careful about this because when writing historical fiction, you have to tell the facts that you confirmed and then
Right.
the things that you fictionalized, right?
Right.
And there was Harold Jackman, who was Count's best friend, who was known as the handsomest man in Harlem, and he was fine. Okay, he was that. And there were rumors about them. I also, really believe that they were just really good friends. I don't know, but listen, the rumors were rampant, and it
Right.
was everywhere. And Count, was a wonderful friend to Yolande. Even after things soured for them, she still kept in touch with him, and she supported him in the media because, like I said, the paparazzi were after her. As soon as everything went left, there was that after the wedding, there were newspaper articles every day regarding the two of them and the goings on of their marriage and even the demise of it. And so their friendship held firm throughout all of that. And I wanted to make sure that I portrayed it in a very authentic way. Countee loved writing poetry. He almost spoke poetically. His letters were so beautiful. I loved reading Countee's letters. But Countee was messy too. And I'm
Yes.
going to save some of that for the book. He was real messy.
Yes, he was.
Some of the things that he said about Yolande to Harold in his letters, I was like, excuse me, Mr. Man. But he was, he was a scholar. He was a prodigy in his own right, and W.E.B. Du Bois was in love with him. He was in love with Countee, okay?
Yes, yes.
And he definitely wanted him for his son-in-law. He was very excited for them to marry.
And that's just something to think about, that because the question was, let me see if it pops up here. Did Yolande and her husband have a good friendship, even though he was gay and it was a elaborate marriage? So you kind of already answered that question. Yeah. Not confirmed, maybe not gay in the way that we might think of. Like nowadays, we think of down low or whatever the case may be. It is what it is.
Right. But, and it was, it was the 1920s. So it was different than, and I want people when they're reading, especially, my friends in the LGBT community, because I am an ally, I want them to read it through a 1920s lens. They didn't put those labels on themselves. If a man wanted to frequent a bathhouse and sleep with another man, it wasn't necessarily a label that they were going to put on themselves. I'm gay, I'm bisexual. That wasn't really a thing, because remember, they all still had the goal of, creating more talented individuals. So they were still thinking of marriage. Countee was certainly on the scene trying to find a wife. And so it was different than we have in 2026. There was no gay marriage. There was, a famous drag ball that happened every year. And so there were, it was just different than the 2026. 1920s LGBTQ community was different than what we have now. And this is definitely, a story that kind of gives a nod to the queer community. But when it comes to writing our stories, you're definitely not going to see me trying to tell that story. I want to leave that to someone who has that lived experience. So there's not, I'm not following Countee into the bathhouse. So if you're looking for that, don't pick up the book and then write reviews talking about where was the tea. I told y'all up front, we're not in the bathhouse.
Right, exactly. And I love the fact that you mentioned that things then are different than things now, right?
Absolutely.
So we know that this is a community that has always existed. It's nothing new under the sun. Correct. But it's the way that things are spoken of or classified, all those sorts of things. Yeah, so I always say, if you're not in the room where the actions happen, you don't know nothing, right? You don't know nothing. But, just to think of that, because just thinking like we mentioned Ada Bricktop, she was known as, a queer woman. And there, you mentioned Josephine Baker. There's stories about different things with her and who she might be.
There's stories about the two of them. There's stories
Yeah,
about the two
yeah,
of
but
them.
stories
So yeah.
about the two of them. So there was just a
Mhm.
lot of stuff that was happening at that point that is just different than it is now. So yeah, yeah, different but yet the same.
I just feel like they back then didn't really try to put a name on it. Like we call things out, we label it, we get legislation. That's what we do in 2026. And I just don't think that they were trying to put labels on it. It was it like you said, it existed. There was, a community there and they supported one another. And they showed up for Count even at his wedding that they, you
Mhm.
know, cackled about behind the scenes like this is a hot mess. What is
Yeah, look
happening?
at the look on his face. We were talking about that before we came on.
Oh
You see the
yes.
look on his face. He's
Look
a
at his profile. Look at Count. Like he was like, oh my God, what am I doing? What's happening? And Yolanda's just smiling, never the wiser. And you know, I think she would have maybe heard a couple rumors, but I really don't think she knew.
right. But I'm gonna be honest. In reading the book, I was the whole time. I'm like, I don't know, because that one friend that he had, even though nothing's
Oh,
confirmed, I'm like, this
yes,
dude is like around way too much. He's way too invested in what happened with his, his buddy, his best friend.
yes.
But he's a little too invested. So I
Yes,
had
Harold was
questions.
very, very
He
invested
was very
in
invested.
their but Harold was invested in everything in Harlem. His letters to Count were so entertaining. I read so many of his letters at the Schomburg. And when they really wanted to be messy, they would write in French. And then so now I'm not just squinting trying to read the cursive. Now I'm trying to translate as well because there was like they gossiped so much. They talked about how Jesse Books wasn't good, like that, and to them,
Right.
and they were just. It was so catty. It was like reading somebody's text messages, and I loved it. I was just sipping up the tea, like, ooh, this tea, it's hot.
I love that. I love that. Oh, we have another question. Let's see here. Did they have children? Any still living?
So Yolanda did not have children with Countay. She did have a daughter with her second husband, and that happens outside of um, the uh, the time period that I cover in a Harlem wedding. But her little girl does make an appearance at the very end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so y'all gotta read it. And again, you see it's been up there at the top. Go ahead and pre-order a
Pre-order,
copy.
pre-order.
Pre-order comes out May the 12th. So please go ahead and pre-order. I always love when I get to give folks like a sneak peek of something that's coming, but this book is so juicy and the tea is hot because we've only given you like a little snippet.
Oh my goodness, we
There's
have
a
not
lot.
even scratched the
Yeah,
surface of the
scratch the
tea in this
surface
book.
of all that's going on in here. But I just really loved reading about these, I'm saying characters because they're characters in terms of the book, but real people in that context. But one of the things I always think about, and a question that often comes up, even when you're researching or writing about real people, and even though you have some source material that you can go to, how do you kind of determine like what things are should you kind of want to talk about and what things that maybe that you don't want to talk about? How do you kind of navigate that as a writer?
And so again, I tried. And so I do all the research. I want to know everything I can know about the person. Then I put the research to the side because now is storytelling time because this is
Mm-hmm.
fiction. And so it's the same way I build any fiction story. I need to know what the protagonist's goal is. I need to know what they learn along the way. I need to
Mm-hmm.
know who the antagonist is, who's getting in the way of the protagonist's hopes and dreams. And when you start to pull the story together that way, you're snatching facts from the research that you did and interweaving them into your story. And that is the fun of it. That's my favorite part of it. Once I've learned everything, and then there are things, you don't know what you don't know until you start writing the book. And
Mm-hmm.
so, of course, there are little things you're going to go back and research, like, what was the women's dorm named at Fisk
Mm-hmm.
University? Like, I wouldn't think to capture that little factoid
Right.
in my initial research, but as I'm writing the story, I'm making little notes. I need this, I need that. So I think when I know the story that I want my character to tell, that
Mm-hmm.
is how I know what facts to bring in and what things to leave out. And I will share this this one thing, Yolande, I did not have every love interest that she had in Harlem in the book. There were too
Right.
many. Um, and it's because, like I said, she was a Lori Harvey of the Harlem Renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
She was being, set up, and her father was a matchmaker from the time she came of age.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had multiple, friends that she dated and she saw and considered marriage with, but none were greater in her heart than Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
There is the book written by David Levering Lewis, when Harlem was in vogue, and he talks about Yolande and Jimmy's love, that
Mm-hmm.
he was the great love of her life, and he was.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I like this quote that we have. Sunny Days share. Research is formalized curiosity. It
Oh, I
is
love
poking
that.
and praying with a purpose that's serving a
Yes,
person.
yes,
Yes, I love that. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
definitely poking and prying, because
Yeah,
that's
'cause I
what
mean,
it
there's
feels
so
like.
much. Because I can imagine, even with the book, and the book is like 400 pages, so it's a good, but it reads quickly though. So that was one thing. I
And
was
I
like,
cut 100 pages in the in my edit. So a little fun fact: in the first draft, we had Jimmy and Yolande's POV,
okay,
um,
okay, okay.
and it was very long. And there is a point in the story where, um, I think we don't care about Jimmy's POV anymore, and so that's
Right, yeah,
why
makes sense.
it was like, well, this is really Yolande's story. That's my editor, Rachel Kahn at William Morrow. She was like, this is Yolande's story. And I said, I have to agree with that. And I'm the type that I push back to the editorial notes, but that was a very good one because it really is Yolande's story. This is, Yolande's conflict with her father that carries
Mhm.
us through the entire novel. And so we went bye to Jimmy's POV, but I never delete words that I've written. So I might share a little bit as
Okay.
the book, starts to make its way through the book clubs and the reader base. I might share a few of the chapters that are from Jimmy's POV because he has some interesting times as well.
Yes, I mean, just from the little bit that we see in this book, I can only imagine. And it would be interesting to see, like, okay, we know what's going on with him in relation to Yolande, but like, what's happening when there are times when maybe they're not, as closer in communication? What's he thinking? What's he feeling? Yeah, it would be interesting to see that because he is in an interesting space because he loves this woman, but there are a lot of obstacles. There are a lot of things from the outside that are coming in and impacting something that should just be cut and dry. We love each other, let's make it happen, but there are all these other pieces to the puzzle, and we see how Yolande has to deal with it as being the daughter of WEB, but it's not we don't really get to see how he feels about it. So yeah,
Yeah.
that would be great to see some of those things. Let's see here, we're gonna go a couple minutes over. You okay?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
Okay,
good.
so we'll make sure. And I'm gonna say that one question. Oh, someone, thanks for keeping it true to the main character story. Absolutely. So this question kind of goes into one of the other things I want to talk about with you. Do you see a Harlem Wedding becoming a TV adaptation? Because you.
And absolutely, absolutely. There's so much juice in this. And like I said, like the stuff that was left out, like there's a huge community. And I would absolutely love to see this adapted. Absolutely. There is a young lady, and I cannot think of her name right now, but she looks just like Yolande.
Oh wow.
Is it Storm? I can't think of her last name.
Storm
Um,
Reed.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to see her playing Yolande. So there's so much about the Harlem Renaissance that I want to see. I want to see the Lindy Hop. I want to see the Black and Tan clubs of Harlem. I want to see all of it. There's so much. It's just a big universe with so many interesting stories and so many Like I could write a book on a person from the Harlem Renaissance every year for the next 10 years and still not run out of Black greatness and Black excellence. And so I would love to see this, just like we have the Gilded Age. I would love to
Right.
see a Harlem Renaissance, these characters unfold on the screen. Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. But speaking of unfolding on the screen, now that's one of the things that you do. I just saw in the last week you posted about a film that's coming out called A Sister Holiday, based upon your first book, What a Sister Should Do.
Yes.
So you are already in that space in terms of working on adaptations and things.
Yes. So I typically will write the proposal to adapt my novels. I write film treatments, series Bibles. But for A Sister Holiday, this was me and my husband started a company, Warren Productions, and this was the first film that we put cameras up, meaning we physically produced it. We hired the crew. I catered all the food
Oh, wow.
on the set. And so it was really, we went into pre-production in November. It was very quick. We filmed in January. We're heavy in post-production right now, about to start meeting with folks regarding distribution. And so it's really been an interesting journey. What a Sister Should Do was my, debut novel, still probably most loved amongst my readers. And I did a stage play version of it in the early 2000s. And so this Christmas adaptation it's got the same characters, but there's a different storyline than in the book. So even the folks who read the book 20 years ago will still find joy in this new holiday story with Taylor, Yvonne, and Pam, the three sisters who came together in prayer at as a part of their women's ministry at church. And so I really enjoyed putting this film together with my husband. We have a wonderful director, Lawrence Law Watford. The cast is amazing. We had Tia Santa Maria, who this is going to be like, I want to, not her first film role, but I think her first really big lead. My son, Brent Warren II, has a leading role. And then we have Confidence, who was in Honk for Jesus Save Your Soul, Drew Sidora from Real Housewives of Atlanta, and Step Up. We have Terrell Hicks from Belly, and what's the other movie? A Bronx Tale.
Yeah.
And so we have a wonderful cast that, came together to really bring this film to fruition. And my daughter's in it. She has a role, and it was just really it was an amazing experience. I can't wait for everybody to see it. We're praying for a holiday release this year, so everybody who prays out there, pray with us.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I saw you went back home to Cleveland to work on it.
I did. The book takes place in Cleveland.
Okay.
And, we have a good set of friends and family. My best friend is in the movie, and, she helped her church, allowed us to come in and film there. And so we just have a lot of good, synergy with the folks in Cleveland. And Women in Film and TV, the Ohio chapter, really helped us. They put together our crew. The president of that chapter, Stacy Malone, helped us put together our crew. And we had some really amazing people that just came together. There was lots of Black women in our crew. And, just I was happy to be able to bring it back home to Cleveland.
I love that. I love that. And when I saw it, I said, "Oh, okay, it's pretty neat. I love it." From the hometown. But I just love, what you're doing in terms of just your writing and the fact that you are looking at different and not just looking at, but exploring and actually doing other ways of storytelling, because I just think that's so important, especially at a time when people are trying to not tell our stories.
Right.
or diminish our stories, or we get something and it's good and it stays on for one season and then it's gone type of thing. So I love
Yeah.
seeing people like kind of taking things by the reins and deciding for themselves that, hey, I'm going to go ahead and produce this and, do whatever it takes to put it out there in the world. I just think that's so important.
You have to green light yourself. And I tell authors all the time, I help authors package their book for film and TV. I've done multiple boot camps. And one time I did a 6 month, but I
Wow.
will never do that again. Even though
Okay.
I love those ladies, it was just too much. But I love to help people bring their own stories
Mhm.
because this is our intellectual property. And, there are production companies that Hollywood likes to come along and do what they do. But then we should have ownership in the stories that we've created. And so that is one of my passions, is helping authors, particularly authors, adapt their stories for TV and film, because a lot of times authors are not a part of the process. The book is
Right.
acquired and then it's okay, we'll let you know when the movie comes out. And it
Mm.
doesn't always have to be that way. I mean, it had to happen for me that way on a couple of my films, but you know it's a beautiful thing to be a part of the story when it goes to TV and film as well.
That's so powerful. So again, I appreciate you for doing that, and just tapping into that skill set to be able to do it. That you can kind of take the reins for yourself and not just have to always hand it over to someone else.
Hmm.
Something to see that. Now I know that you have been in this field for 20 years. Yes. And in that context, you've changed your style of writing. So,
Oh,
one of my
absolutely.
last questions is, what was it that made you kind of decide, okay, I've been writing in one space, but I want to transition it to doing some different things as well?
It's because I have just a natural curiosity. I read everything. I read across
Mhm.
genres. I like all kinds of books, and I never want to feel like I'm repeating myself. And
Mhm.
so, for many, many years, I wrote inspirational fiction. And my beliefs haven't changed,
Right.
but I certainly want to expand my storytelling to other themes and other ways that people approach the obstacles in their lives, and it's not always necessarily a faith-based perspective, and that's okay. So I love writing mainstream fiction. I actually have a couple of thrillers I'm working on.
Ooh.
I love historical fiction. I have several historical figures that I still want to write about. So I just never want to box myself in. I have been writing for 20 years and I feel like I'm just getting started. I'll be 52 this year and I got a lot of juice left. So I have a lot of stories left to tell.
I know that's right. I know that's right. So, for those who might be interested in writing, picking up the pen and getting this process started, what tips or tricks or inspiration would you provide to someone who either wants to do, like plays and screenplays, or to write, novels? What kind of advice would you give to anybody who's looking to do that?
So I would say for anybody who wants a career in writing, one, you can't be afraid to put paper to pen. It's not going to be perfect at first. I think Jordan Peele said about writing screenplays, you're just shoveling all the sand into the sandbox at first, and then you're going to refine it, right? And so you can't be afraid to get started. I say to anybody who wants to write, get started. And then also, I always say, if you want to be a writer of any genre, any, screenplays, stage plays, you have to read these things as well to feel the cadence, the flow of it. How do you tell the story through these various means? You have to read and you have to write. You cannot have a writing career without doing those two things. And then to have a career at it, you have to be okay with sharing. You have to share
Mhm.
it with the
Mhm.
world. And that sometimes is the scariest part. But you can start in pieces. You can share little snippets. On social media is a great vehicle for that. And you can submit short stories, poems to various magazines, literary magazines that accept that. And that's a way to inch out there. Join a writers group where you can, if you're not ready to share it with the world, you can share it with your writing partners. That's another good way to get feedback on your writing. But you have to start. You
Mm.
have to start. You can't just keep saying, I want to write a book. You have to write the thing.
Yes. And that was for me too, because everywhere I go and I tell people that I talk to authors all the time, like, well, are you one? I'm like, not
What you
yet.
waiting on? What you waiting on, homegirl? Come on. Where the book at?
Yes, yes, I get it. All, I mean, even today, I met a new young lady today, and she was like, "Oh, so you got a book too?" Like, no, ma'am, not yet. So yes, it really is a thing, and I do read a lot. So I think honestly, that's some of it because I'm reading so much.
Mhm.
It's like I want to make sure that when I do write, that I'm like writing my voice and not like taking in other people's voices
Yeah.
because I read so much. But it's coming. It's coming.
Well, you'll find your voice by writing.
Mhm.
And I always recommend people carry something to write with, whether it's a tablet, a notebook. Sometimes I write on my phone, the notes app on my phone. Have something when the inspiration strikes to make
Mhm.
sure you capture it, because the muse doesn't always show up when you
Mhm.
sit down to write. Sometimes the muse shows up when you're on the train. Sometimes the muse shows up in the bathtub. Sometimes the muse just shows up. You're out taking a walk, getting your, exercise in sunlight, and here's the muse. So make sure you're always ready to capture those moments of inspiration, because they can carry you on the days where the muse doesn't show up. Because I try to write not every day, but maybe 4 or 5 times a week. When I sit down, it doesn't always show up. So if I get one paragraph some days, that's good.
Mhm.
But one paragraph is progress. If I get one chapter, that's great. Some days I don't get more than a couple paragraphs. So, and that's after writing for 20 years and knowing how to structure a story and knowing what I want to say. Sometimes the words just don't come. And, that's okay.
It's funny that you talked about walking because this was some years ago, and fortunately, I remembered most of it. But I remember walking one day, and it was one of those days I might have been walking like 5-6 miles, and it's like I crafted like a whole story while I was walking.
Yeah.
But and at the time I wasn't recording because people I thought I was nuts. So, like she's talking to herself, but I like in my head I crafted a whole story just taking a walk. So yeah, definitely can show up in a lot of different places. But today we want to just remind everybody we are here for a Harlem wedding, which comes out on May the 12th. So I do know that because we're getting this early sneak peek, that you are going to be doing the whole book tour thing. So please tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about the tour that you'll be going on.
Oh wow. Okay. So I am going on tour. I have some more cities that were added. I'm kicking it all off in Harlem the first week of May. May 7th through the 9th, we'll be there having a launch party in Harlem. That's gonna be a blast. Then I'll be in Cincinnati, Chicago, Baltimore, Atlanta, Dallas, Houston. I feel like I'm leaving a couple out, but I'm gonna be on tour for all of May and June and into July. Oh, New Orleans for the One Love tour. I'm going to Black Romance Book Festival. So if
Yes.
you're coming, bring your book for me to sign or grab one at the festival. And it's tour time, and I am, taking my vitamins now, getting my constitution up because it's a lot of work, but I love it. I love seeing my readers out in the wild. That's what I say, out in the wild. And connecting and really hearing, your thoughts about the book, and even my entire catalog. I love talking to readers. It's been the joy of my career, connecting.
I love that. Yes, I will look forward to seeing you here in Atlanta for the Black Romance Book Festival. Yeah. To
That's
see
gonna
you
be
in person again.
shenanigans.
Yes.
Shenanigans await.
Shenanigans away. Yeah, it's gonna be some real shenanigans. So anybody who's going there, just yeah.
Get ready.
It's going. Oh, somebody saying come to New Jersey. Oh, sorry, it's popping off and coming back. Okay, come to New Jersey, basically. Yes. So I love that. I love that. And so I guess New York right now is the closest place, but
Yes.
you know,
Hey, I'm open to any city that invites me. I will come. So,
yes,
and I'm
yes,
on the East Coast, so New Jersey is a hop, skip, and a jump. Just let
right.
me know.
Yes, yes. It's definitely. Thank you for all the comments, kind words. Yes, it
Yes,
is a
thank you
beautiful
guys.
book chat. We had such a great time this evening. Just out. I said, I know I lied. I said last. Oh, what is writing schedule while on tour? Well, that's a good question. Is there a writing schedule on tour?
A little. I do need to write while I'm on tour
Oh
because
wow.
I am, trying to put together my next book proposal. So I am actually probably going to be writing on, but it won't be much, it'll, if I am in a hotel, I have a hard time writing in hotels.
Hmm.
But I will get a little bit done. It'll be piecemeal.
Right. And I can imagine because your brain is, yeah, it's a lot. You know, when you like come off the stage, so to speak, all the energy and kind of got to get your
Yeah.
mind right and then prepare to do it again, the next day or whatever the case may be. So I can imagine that would be a challenge. And I'm sorry, I lied. Last question. Audio.
Oh, of course. Yes. It'll be on audio. And
Mhm.
as a matter of fact, the audio is up for pre-order as well. So if you like audio books, I'm not a huge fan of audiobooks. I try to get into them, but that's not really my thing. But I know readers love audiobooks. And Karen Chilton is the narrator for Harlem Wedding. She also narrated Sadiqa Johnson's book, Keeper of Lost Children.
Mhm.
She is a wonderful narrator, and I was so happy to be able to get her for a Harlem Wedding. So I'm looking forward to hearing her rendition of the story.
Yes, I love that. And Sadiqa is coming here, soon as well. So yeah, that's the first time announcing that. So yeah, Sadiqa is on en route to BGC Book Club as well. So I'm excited
Yay!
about that. But thank you so much, Tiffany. If you could just hold on for me for 1 second,
I surely will.
I'm
Thank
going to
you
give
so much.
everybody the announcements of what's coming next. But again, as always, thank you for being here. I look forward to all the other things that you write because number one, I love your writing. Number
Thank
two, you're a
you.
homegirl, so I'm always going to hype you up.
Please, yes.
Hype you up. So thank you so
Thank
much for your
you.
time. And everybody can see, go ahead and pre-order that book. So
Thank y'all. Thank you
yeah,
for the pre-orders. Appreciate
yes,
you.
yes. I'll see you in just a moment.
Okay.
All righty. Let me get to the right spot so she can grab some water. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here for this wonderful conversation with Tiffany. Please go ahead and grab your copies of A Harlem Wedding. Of course, the other screen was showing that would take you directly there, but I'm also going to pop up. It is at the Brown Girl Collective Bookstore.com. I'm sorry, Brown Girl Collective, yeah, bookstore.com. It's a part of Bookshop. So if you go there, you will find this book as well as all the other people that I've talked to over the years and some folks that I haven't, just because I love to support Black women writers in this space and maybe introduce you to books or authors that you have not heard of. So just so that you know, in terms of who's coming next week, actually it won't be live because she lives overseas and I'm going to pre-record and then put it up at the normal time. But I will be talking to Eleanor Shearer about fireflies in winter. So look for that a week from today. It'll be up at 8:00 p.m. And then 2 weeks from today, I will be talking to Angela Nissel about her memoir, Good Grief, Pass the Bread, Mom is Dead. That's an interesting title, right? So I'm looking forward to having that conversation as well. And then, of course, I'll be sharing more of what's upcoming. But just so you know, 3 weeks from today, on April 27th, I will be celebrating, in addition to having a guest with me, I will also be celebrating 6 years of being in this space and hosting BGC Book Club. So I'm really excited about, going in, finishing up 6 years and moving into year 7 of being in this space. So I look forward to seeing you all for all of the things that are coming up in the next few weeks and beyond. And until then, look forward to seeing you real soon. Take good care. Bye-bye.